All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Today, our staff experts are going to kick things off by reviewing some of the key things you need to know about our latest enhancements to your exam experience, including the new practice exams, enhanced score reports, the new ESL accommodation, and more. Afterwards, we'll allow time for a Q&A session where you can ask questions you may still have. Please, I must remind everyone to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions you may have. Michelle and Nick, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Cassandra. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Cohn. I'm Assistant Vice President of Examination here at NCARB. I just celebrated my 8-year anniversary of being at NCARB. Prior to joining, I practiced architecture at a few different firms here in Washington, D.C. And I'm glad to be here today to talk with you all about the exams. Nick?
Sure, thanks, Michelle. My name is Nick Ruspecki. I am a senior manager on the examinations team at NCARB. And like Michelle, I am a licensed architect in the District of Columbia. And prior to joining NCARB, I worked at a couple of large corporate firms here in the DC area. And I've been with NCARB for about 7 years. So nice to see everyone here this afternoon.
Well, Nick and I have a few updates to share with everyone today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And all right, so Nick, Cassandra, can you see the slideshow? So excellent, great. So I'm going to walk through some updates here, and some of our updates might actually answer some of the questions that you have. So I'll encourage everyone to maybe hold off on the Q&A for just a few moments, give us a chance to provide you some updates and other information, and then we will definitely have time for questions. So first thing, just providing some general updates on the status of our migration to PSI. So as many of you know, May 31st was our last day of testing with Prometric. And then we entered a 2-week period of no delivery. During that time, we released free practice exams, 1 for each division. And I'm going to leave it there for a moment. We're going to talk about those practice exams a few slides from now. June 14th was our first day of testing with PSI, and most recently, just a couple days ago, we announced new accommodations available for candidates who speak or read English as a second language, and we're going to talk more about that in this presentation as well. So some quick statistics for everyone. Just since June 14th, we have delivered over 1,700 exams, about 20% online, 80% test center. And both those data points, the number of exams delivered and the percent in each modality, really tracks pretty closely with our deliveries with Prometric. So, good delivery so far. We're really pleased to see that. And with that, Nick, why don't we share some more about the accommodation?
Absolutely. So you heard Michelle mention that we had a big announcement that happened earlier this week that hopefully all of you had the opportunity to see in your email or on our blog or on our website. We announced a new accommodation for English as a second language individuals. So what this accommodation is it provides 20% additional testing time, as well as you can apply for a personally supplied word-to-word translation dictionary. Now, you don't have to apply for both accommodations. If you are an English as a second language individual, you can apply for just the 20% additional testing time, or you could apply just for the personally supplied word-to-word translation dictionary. Now, a couple things on these accommodations. The word-to-word translation dictionary, sometimes you'll see it referred to as a word-for-word or word-to-word. This dictionary is basically, it's not a full translation dictionary, and you'll see an example there on the right side of the screen. That's translating Spanish word to English. Typically, these translation dictionaries, they just say they'll have the word, and let's say Spanish as an example, and then the translation to English. So it's really important to make sure it's a word-to-word dictionary and not a full translation dictionary. Now, if you do pursue this accommodation for the personally supplied translation dictionary, it does need to be a printed copy of this. And this is only an accommodation for those of you who are going to be testing in a physical test center. Part of the reason behind that is when you go to the test center with this dictionary, it's going to be inspected by the proctor to ensure you have no additional notes or any prohibitive items located within that dictionary. The 20% additional testing time accommodation, that's available for both online proctored exams and in-person exams. Now, on the note of this new ESL accommodation, you'll see a note there on the bottom about New York. So NCARB, as many of you probably know, there are 55 licensing boards where you can earn a license to practice architecture. Out of those 55, 54 of them accept this ESL accommodation. New York will not accept any examination given under non-standard conditions, and that includes these ESL accommodations. They will, however, accept the provisions of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, what that means for you all, if you're looking to apply for initial licensure in New York, you cannot submit for this accommodation. NCARB will not process that. This also impacts you if you're thinking about down the road, potentially getting a license in New York, so a reciprocal license. We'll use the example of, let's say you're getting a license in Pennsylvania now, and you're thinking, you know what, maybe down the road, I want to pursue a license in New York. New York will not accept any exams that were delivered with this ESL accommodation. So that's some important information for you all to know. Next slide, Michelle. If this ESL accommodation, you're sitting there thinking, gosh, Nick and Michelle, this is something I'm really interested in. What you need to do is you can either go to our NCARB, the ARE guidelines or NCARB's website, and we have a request and accommodations page on our website. Now, once you go to that website, it's going to have a link to the accommodations request form. You'll see it on the right side of the screen there. And what you're going to need to do is basically complete this accommodations request. It's going to ask you if you want the 20% additional time. You can check a box for that, or the word for word translation dictionary. You can also select that. And then basically what you're going to do is you're going to attest that English is not your native language. Once you do that and you sign the form, you're going to submit it to NCARB's customer relations team, and they're going to process it and add that accommodation to your record. Now, what's really important is if you have an exam scheduled today, you can't retroactively apply this accommodation to that already scheduled exam. So you have to make sure you apply for this before scheduling any exams. And then a final note on this one before I pass it back over to you, Michelle, is NCARB is going to conduct frequent audits on those individuals who apply for this accommodation. And that's something we're going to do regularly to ensure that those candidates applying for this are actually non-native English speakers. So Michelle, I'll pass it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Nick. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about when you're at the test center, what that security process is going to look like. So we've heard from a few candidates who've said, hey, this just seems different from Prometric. Is this what should be happening? So we thought it might be helpful to run through what you can expect when you're at a PSI test center. The first thing on the list here, verification of ID. So that is your driver's license or other government issued ID. You will show that to the test center administrator, or TCA as they're known, and they will verify that you are who you say you are. Now, you might be used to at Prometric, your ID was photocopied, you were photographed. Those things are not going to happen with PSI, and that is totally okay. Really, what PSI is going to do is just, again, look at your license or other ID and verify that you are who you say you are. So don't be alarmed if you are not photographed. The next thing is that you will sign a test center terms and conditions document. Now, this is something that you should have seen already. It's actually included in the scheduling process. So when you first schedule your appointment at a test center, on one of the screens there, you will see some information about PSI's test center terms and conditions. You have the option to look at a copy of that and really just acknowledge that, yep, I understand this document and I'm prepared to sign it at the test center. So fast forward, now you're at the test center. Now is the time to actually sign that document that you've seen previously. Our next thing here, personal belongings going into a small locker or storage bag. So this is something that is a little bit different from Prometric. Many of you are used to the lockers in Prometric test centers. Put your stuff in there, you get that key. Sometimes it's like a little wristband that you put on so you can carry it around with you. PSI test centers are a little bit different. Some of them also have lockers. Some of them have storage bags, and those bags are not huge. They're, I don't know, maybe like 11 by 17, 12 by 18, something like that. It's basically just a heavy duty bag. It's a flat bag. There's a zipper at the top. You put your stuff into it, then the TCA will lock the zipper and then hand the bag back to you. And then you take that bag with you into the testing room. So that's something that candidates have come to us and said, well, that was weird that I brought my stuff into the testing room with me. But again, completely secure because that bag is locked. You can't get into it until the TCA unlocks the zipper. So in fact, there's a strap on one side of the bag that you're just going to hang that bag over the back of your chair with that strap. And if you go on break during your exam, you'll carry that bag back out of the testing room with you. The TCA can unlock that bag. You can grab your snack, whatever you need from there. And then the TCA will lock the bag up again before you go back into the testing room. So those bags, like I said, they're not huge. If you carry a backpack with you or a large purse or other bag, it's likely not going to fit into that storage bag. So I really encourage you to just take the bare minimum with you to the test center, just so that you won't be caught off guard by how you need to store your things when you get there. Now, a few other things on this list, pretty similar to what you've experienced with Prometric. A physical security screening, you'll need to, if you're wearing long sleeves, you'll need to roll up your sleeves, roll up the bottoms of your pant legs, turn your pockets inside out. Note here, exam administrations are video recorded by PSI. The exact same thing happened at Prometric test centers. And then last thing, no access to personal belongings while you're in the testing room. So again, you might have your locker bag with you in the testing room, but you won't be able to access the things inside of it. So note here at the bottom, again, your photograph will not be taken at the test center and your fingerprint will not be taken at the test center. So don't be alarmed by seeing that difference there. It is totally okay that those things are not happening. But this is the list here of what you can expect at the test centers. And shifting onto another topic now, let's take a few minutes to talk about those new practice exams. So NCARB released these a couple weeks ago. We hope that some of you have already started to take advantage of them. They are free, they are full length, and they are fully scored. So I think a really great study tool for you all. We have one exam for each division of the ARE. And let's walk through exactly how you're going to access these through your NCARB record. From NCARB's website, you will log into your record, click that go button, click on over to your exams tab, and then you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where you will see practice exam dashboard. Once you click that link, you're actually going to be brought into a different site. This is actually essentially the same test driver that runs the exam at the test center or through online proctoring. That is also where these practice exams live. There's a welcome screen, not shown here, but there's a welcome screen when you first land on the dashboard that gives you a lot of information. But the long and the short of it is you will see a list of practice exams, one for each division, plus a multi-division practice exam that pulls items from all 6 divisions. If you have not taken any exams yet and you're wanting to know what is this all about, what is it going to look like, what's the look and feel, how do I navigate, you might want to start with that multi-division practice exam just to kind of get used to the experience of taking an exam generally. But once you are ready to study, in this case, say for project management, go on over to the project management practice exam. You're going to click this blue add to cart button. You'll notice here, price $0. These are all free to you. You will put it in your shopping cart, much like any online commerce. You'll accept these pretty simple terms and conditions, and you will have successfully purchased your $0 exams. You'll then want to click on the exams button here on the top left, and there you will see the exams that you've purchased. So this is that project management exam that you just purchased moments ago. And you can click this blue button here to start your exam. Now, once you click that, you're going to see two options. How do you want to take this practice test? Test mode, as it says, just like the actual exam. Note that these practice exams have the same number of items and the same amount of time on the timer as what you will see during your real exam. So when you take the exam in test mode, it is just like the actual exam. In practice mode, again, same number of items, same amount of time on the timer, but the difference is that you will have an opportunity to see all the correct answers and explanations of why those are the correct answers actually while you're taking the exam. So here's what that looks like on this particular question. Well, this candidate, they did an attempt to answer this question. They just went right to that explanation button, and you can see these green check marks popped up next to what are the correct response options. This is a check all that apply item. And down here are some explanations of why each of those response options is the correct answer to this question. Down here at the bottom, you'll see topic resource management. That is indicating that within the project management division, this particular question comes from the resource management content area. So if this question is confusing to you, you want to learn a little bit more about this, that would be the area to go and study a bit further. At the end of your practice exam, you will get a results file, and this will show, well, in this case, 0 correct. But if you had gone through the exam and answered it, of course, it would show you how many items you got correct, show you how well you did in each of those content areas, and then again, have all the questions and those correct answers and explanations for you. These results are actually saved for you back on this practice exam dashboard. So we were in the exams section to actually take our exam. Now we're in the past exam section. And you can see here, actually this candidate has taken the project management practice exam twice now. And the first time they failed it, second time they passed it. So, you know, they're probably at a pretty good point now to actually take their exam for real. One thing to remember is that at this time, we just have one version of each of these practice exams. So just know that if you take it the second time, you'll see the same questions. They'll be in a different order because it's randomized, but you will see those same questions again. It is in our long-term plans to be able to roll out additional practice exams in the future. So stay tuned on that one. And Nick, why don't we switch it back over to you? You want to talk about the enhanced score report?
Sure, thanks, Michelle. So it looks like there are a lot of questions coming in here. So we're going to talk score reports, and then we can jump right over and start answering some of those questions you all have. So another big change many of you probably noticed is we have a new enhanced score report that we released. So a couple of notes on this score report. If passing score reports are not changing. So if you tested with Prometric and now you're testing with PSI, that passing score report will remain the same. You're going to receive a passing score. It's going to give you the date of when that exam expires, which is 5 years from the point that you took and passed that exam. And then it'll give a little bit of history on your testing. It'll give some information on your testing history. Now, the bigger changes are on the failing score reports. And so many of you, if you have tested with Prometric, you probably remember the level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 feedback that was provided on failing score reports. We received a lot of feedback from candidates saying, this is confusing. What does a level 2 mean? What if I got a level 3? Do I need a level 1 and a level 2 to pass the division? So what NCARB did is we took that feedback from you all as testers, and we made some changes. So we basically got rid of those level 1, 2, 3, 4 feedback on the failing score reports, and we replaced it with percentage-based performance feedback, and basically telling you what percentage of items you got correct within each content area. And I'll show you all an example of that here in a second. What we also added was a scaled score. And Michelle, if you jump to the next slide. So the scaled score, only available on those failing score reports. It's not available on passing score reports. And I may add, this scaled score is also not available on previously failed divisions with Prometric. So the scaled score is only available for exams delivered with PSI. And so what this score is, the scaled score is it ranges between 100 and 800, with a 550 representing the threshold to meet minimal competency. And so the idea behind this scaled score is if you're comparing multiple attempts of the same division, you can gauge your progress towards reaching that minimal threshold. So let's say on this attempt, I scored a 444, and let's say I retake the exam and I score a 535. What that would tell me as a candidate is I made improvements and I'm very close to passing this division. And so we hope you all will use this scaled score to compare divisional attempts when you prepare to retest. Next slide, Michelle. On page 2, this is where we provide performance level feedback on the content areas assessed across the exam. And so the first thing I'll highlight is you'll see it in a box up there within the text. We're providing you all the range, the percentage based range of what the cut score is set at to meet minimal competencies. For this example here, this is for the practice management division. You'll need to earn a 61 to 68%. Now there's a range because NCARB, when we release this exam into test centers, there are multiple versions or multiple forms that you could be delivered. Some are more difficult than others. And so what happens is the cut scores are equated. And so you're all being assessed on the same level of competency. And so that's why there's a range that's located there. Now, if you look down at the table, you'll notice that your percentage correct. We're telling you what percentage of scored items did you get correct within each one of those content areas. And it's really important that you know that that's based on scored items. Many of you may know there are pretest items that range between 6 and 9 across all 6 divisions of the ARE. This percentage does not include those pretest items. And so what you can do is if I was looking at this score report, I can see, content area 3, I scored 33%. You'll notice the column next to my percentage correct is the passing candidates percent correct. So this will give you an idea of that average candidate who's passing this exam, what percentage of items are they getting correct? And the example here in content area 3, I scored a 33, average passing candidate scoring a 73. So I need to brush up on content area 3 as I prepare to retest on this division. We really hope that this feedback helps you all as you prepare to retest on exams. And one important note before we go to Q&A, know that this is not a scoring rubric for the exam. The exam is scored based on 1 point for each scored item. And so the way the scoring engine is when you're completed with your exam, it adds up all the questions you got correct. It adds up those point totals, 1 per item, and that's what it's scored on based on the cut score. We are not looking for a certain percentage within each content area to pass the exam. So that's helpful information as you begin to prepare for retesting on one of the ARE divisions. With that, Michelle, I believe that's the end of our presentation, and I'll toss it back over to Cassandra to start fielding some of these questions that you all have.
Okay, thank you, Nick and Michelle. So we'll head into our Q&A session, viewers. So go ahead and leave your question in the Q&A tool. And our first question of the day, Nick and Michelle, it is ESL accommodation heavy. So is this ESL accommodation a one-time application and approval, or do we need to apply for the accommodation every time we schedule an exam? If we have schedule an exam for 2 months from now, can I still go ahead and apply for ESL accommodation? I know that was 3 questions in one, but
yeah, Michelle, I can take these 3 questions. So let's start with the ESL accommodations request process. So there's a form. If you go on our website and they're under the Pass the ARE section, there's a button that says requesting accommodations. If you go there, it gives you some directions for requesting an ESL accommodation, as well as the application. And so when you fill out this application, you send it to Cassandra and her team over in NCARB's customer relations. They're going to process this and add it to, basically it gets added to your testing eligibilities. So you only need to apply for it and get it approved 1 time. And you can use it for all divisions that you take after that point in time. So you don't need to reapply for every division each time you go to take an ARE division. So that's the first part of the question. I believe the second part was asking about, let's say you have a division already scheduled for July. How would you go about applying this accommodation to that? Unfortunately, you can't. You can't apply this ESL accommodation, as well as any of the ADA accommodations that are available. You can't apply them to previously scheduled exam appointments. So a couple ways if you to deal with this. You could go in and take your scheduled exam without the accommodation. That's one option. The second option is we actually have a cancel functionality that we've rolled out with PSI. So you could potentially cancel that exam, apply for the accommodation, have it applied to your exam eligibilities, and then reschedule that exam after that point in time. So that answers that question. Was there a third part, Cassandra?
Nick, you have captured all of the questions.
Okay, great.
Let's go on to the second set. I know New York State will not accept exams with ESL accommodations. If I'm approved as a foreign architect and I'm planning to get my license with New York State, is there any way for me to take the exam with the ESL time extension or accommodation?
I will jump in on this one. Unfortunately, the answer is no. The New York board has been pretty clear with NCARB that they are not able to accept examinations passed using these ESL accommodations. So unfortunately, there is nothing that NCARB can do about that because, of course, it is up to each individual board to determine those, what they will accept for licensure. So I would encourage everyone, if you are interested in pursuing licensure in New York and you are interested in being able to take advantage of these ESL accommodations, it's important to understand that is a New York board restriction, and you can certainly reach out to that board for more information about that. But no, at this time, it is not accepted. NCARB continues to talk with our boards to, share kind of the research and the necessity for these accommodations. But at this time, unfortunately, there's nothing that NCARB can do to assist the candidate in that situation.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, we have a few more questions. The next one is New York the only state in the United States that will not accept the ESL accommodation for initial licensure? And does that also have an impact on reciprocity with Canada?
So the first part of this, yes. So NCARB's membership consists of the 55 licensing boards. New York is one of those members of NCARB. New York, yes. The answer to the first question is yes. New York is the only jurisdiction out of the 55 that will not accept the ESL accommodation for initial licensure or reciprocal licensure. And that reciprocal licensure is really important because, as I mentioned earlier, if you, let's say you're going to get a license in, Pennsylvania or another state, and then 5 years from now, you want to apply for a license in New York, you need to be aware that they will not accept the pass on that, whatever division you pass under those non-standard conditions, including the ESL accommodations. As far as, and I believe when you're talking about Canada, I guess that's if someone has the NCARB certificate and they want to use that certificate to apply for a reciprocal licensure license through the tri-national agreement, which is between the US, Mexico, and Canada. In that case, yes, that would be acceptable.
Thank you, Nick. All right, let's see what this next one is. If in the future, the jurisdiction where I have my license decides not to accept ESL accommodations anymore, what is going to happen with my license if I use the ESL accommodation? Do I need to repeat all the divisions again?
No, once you are licensed, you have that license. We are not aware of any jurisdiction that would then retroactively change that status for any candidate who has used this accommodation. So that would be if a jurisdiction down the road was to change that and say no longer accept a certain accommodation, that would affect candidates currently in the process or future candidates, but that would not impact candidates who are already licensed.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, we're moving on to the next set of questions, and they are not ESL related. Are the exams available to practice more than one time?
I'm going to take this one, Michelle. So referring to the practice exams that Michelle demonstrated, the answer is yes. You can take the practice exams for free as many times as you need to prepare for your exam administration. An important point with that is if you sit down and let's say you're preparing for the practice management division, you take practice management practice exam the first time, and it's that first attempt is going to simulate the closest to the actual exam, because when you take it the second time, you've already been exposed to all of those questions. You take it the third time, you've been exposed to them twice. So you sort of learn the answers to the questions. So, but yeah, you can take it as many times as you need. Maybe the first time you take it is in test mode, as Michelle demonstrated. There are 2 modes, and you see how you did. Maybe you want to add it to your cart for free, take it again under practice mode and see all the explanations. That's acceptable. So you can take them as many times as you need to prepare for the exam.
Thanks, Nick. All right, our next question. I have heard about many issues at the PSI testing centers. Is NCARB in the process of addressing this?
So there's a lot in that question there. And so first thing is that if any candidate experiences an issue at a PSI test center or taking the exam online, reach out to our customer service team. That is, really the first thing that you should do as a candidate. The process for that is outlined in the ARE guidelines. The email address that you want to reach out to there, there's a great form right on our website that you can use. So if there's anything that happens that you feel like something was just off here, reach out to NCARB, because that is the only way that we can track an issue that's occurred and be able to resolve it for you. So that's the first thing I do want to point out there. We have heard from some candidates who have had some issues in the last 2 weeks since we started delivering with PSI. Again, back to the statistics that I presented earlier, we've delivered over 1,700 exams since launching with PSI. We've heard from, I don't know, maybe like 1% of candidates who've had a concern at the test center. And I say that not to minimize the concerns of those candidates, but to say that for the vast majority of candidates, their testing has gone as expected. For the candidates who have reached out to us, yes, we are most definitely working with PSI on a regular basis. Actually, Cassandra, Nick, and I all meet with PSI on a weekly basis and bring these issues to their attention, as well as having a really robust incident ticketing system that we work with PSI's team as well, so that we can track issues, determine if that is an issue at a particular test center that PSI will address directly. If it's a technical issue, which vendor we can work with to resolve it. And that way we're able to assist you as the candidate so that it doesn't happen to you again. So again, we are absolutely handling incidents as we are notified about them, and definitely follow those steps to let us know if something happens during your testing experience.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, the next one is, you mentioned performing an audit for candidates taking advantage of the ESL testing accommodations. Is there any other criteria in addition to submitting the form? How does the council verify that English is a candidate's second language?
Yeah, I can take that. That's a good question, Cassandra. So as part of that form, you're basically attesting that you are a non-native English speaker, and you have to insert on that form your native language. And then along with that, you are signing, basically saying, yep, I'm being 100% truthful when I send this to NCARB. So that's the first step. Now, on top of that, we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be doing audits on this process. So what's going to happen is every month or so, we are going to pull a random sampling of individuals who have applied for this. It's sort of like if any of you on this this webinar this afternoon, if any of you are licensed, hold a license in a jurisdiction, and you have to basically attest that you've completed your continuing education for the year, it's a similar process. That's enforcement through auditing. And so NCARB is going to be following a similar process. We're going to do enforcement through auditing. So we'll select that random sample each month. We're going to reach out to you, and we're going to ask you to supply some supporting information to validate that your document. And so that could be in the form of previous language accommodations that you've been approved for. We're also going to have a validation form that you're going to have signed by a third party, someone like a supervisor or professional colleague, to validate that you are being truthful. And if a candidate, let's say in a situation that a candidate is not truthful in this situation, and they say their native language is Mandarin Chinese, we do the audit, we find out that's not the case. In those situations, NCARB has a professional conduct committee, PCC. That case will be submitted to PCC for evaluation, and which could potentially stall your testing and have career implications down the road. So we're hopeful that anyone submitting this is truthful, and we don't have to go down the path of evaluating based on using the professional conduct committee. Cassandra, does that answer the question?
Yes, that was a good answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few more questions for you. So the next one is, I had approved accommodations with Prometric. Will I still be able to schedule an exam on my own with PSI like I did with Prometric?
I can jump in here. So first thing, if you had approved accommodations to test with Prometric, you will still have those same approved accommodations with PSI. So there is nothing that you as a candidate would need to do to reapply for accommodations. Those accommodations migrated with you from Prometric to PSI. Now, the way that you schedule with your accommodations with PSI is a little bit different. If you are wanting to take your exam online, there is nothing additional that you need to do. You will just go through the scheduling process as usual. You'll be able to self-schedule your exam. The one thing that you should note is that some accommodations are not allowed in the remote proctoring modality. So for instance, since we've been talking about the ESL accommodation, the extended testing time is allowed in the online proctored modality, but the word-to-word translation dictionary is not allowed for online proctoring. So if you have accommodations, you will get that information from one of our customer relations staff, or also in your NCARB record, and you will see it's that clear understanding of what can be used and not used in the online proctoring modality. Now, if you have accommodations and you want to test in a test center, so now you'll be able to use all of your accommodations because you're in that test center setting. In order to schedule your appointment, while you are in the scheduling process, you'll select what exam you want. You'll go through that, the candidate agreement and, review various documentation. And then you will be asked for your best phone number where you can be reached. And so this might not be the phone number in your NCARB record. It's, whatever phone number you can be reached at during normal business hours. You will enter that phone number into the box there. And then you'll get a confirmation screen that a PSI customer service representative will be contacting you within the next 48 hours to schedule your appointment with you. And so in many cases, that has to do with your accommodations might require specific setup with the test center. And so PSI needs to be able to walk through that with you, and they will need to be able to work with your local test center to ensure that those accommodations are available to you at the date and time that you want to test. So you will get that confirmation that you'll be contacted within 48 hours. They will call you. If they are not able to reach you, they will then also send you an email, and that is the email inside your NCARB record, and it will come from a person at psionline.com. So be on the lookout for that, and as well as the voicemail, if you weren't able to answer your phone. And so you will work with that PSI customer service representative to schedule your test center appointment. So that is a little bit different from the process with Prometric, but it is a very successful process. We've had many candidates been able to complete that and really be able to get those appointments that they want at the test center.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, moving right along. Here's another one. If I passed all exams with ESL accommodations, will that be indicated in any manner in my public record for my architect's license?
The answer to that is no. So when NCARB, when you take an examination, We do not, and we transmit your information, so how you did on the exams, to your state licensing board. And so when we transmit that information to the state licensing board, we do not send any accommodations related information. So that's any ESL accommodation. And we also do not send any ADA accommodations that you have on file with NCARB. That's only NCARB holds that information. So your license, the jurisdiction will not be sent that information when they issue you an initial license.
Thank you, Nick. Okay. Will using the ESL accommodation have any impact on receiving an NCARB certificate in the future?
Again, the answer to that is no. It's treated just like any other accommodation. As Nick said, that information is there kind of within your record for the purposes of scheduling your exam, but it's not included on your official transcript with NCARB, on your score reports. That information does not show up. And so again, other than the New York board not accepting examinations with that accommodation, otherwise it is not included on any of that documentation that you get after you complete your exam or after you have the NCARB certificate.
And I want to add one clarifying comment to what I just said, Michelle, on the accommodations info. There are some states out there that you apply for your ADA accommodations directly to the state. So they do have that information. So I just wanted to add that clarification to my comment. But as far as ESL accommodation information, that is not being transmitted to the licensing boards.
Okay. One more question. Does ESL apply to candidates from Puerto Rico trying to be licensed in any jurisdictions in the United States?
Well, I can jump in on that. The ESL accommodation is available to all candidates working towards licensure with any one of our, we'll say, 54 jurisdictions, because we're not counting New York for this conversation. So Puerto Rico is one of our 54 jurisdictions, no different from any of the 50 states or the other territories like DC, where we are sitting right now. So it is absolutely available to our Puerto Rico candidates and available for use in receiving licensure with Puerto Rico.
All right, thank you, Michelle. It looks like we do not have any other questions in the chat. So just some takeaways from our speakers today. Can you kind of give us some key takeaways from your perspective on the webinar and about the transition to PSI and the ESL accommodation?
Well, I do want to mention one thing. I just took a peek inside the Q&A, and I do see some questions in here about test center locations. And I know we've heard some candidate questions about that. And as we've shared previously, PSI actually has a lot more test center locations than Prometric did. And in many cases, you will actually, I think in almost all of our jurisdictions, there's more test centers and they are more spread out. And so whereas previously you might have seen one, say, super center test center in a major urban area, now we might have a smaller test center in that urban area, but more test centers in the suburbs surrounding that area. So we really think that's going to be a benefit for many of our test takers, that they will see more locations. Now, that being said, we are hearing from some candidates to say, I don't know, my nearest test center is farther. That might happen to some candidates. I mean, any change, some candidates are going to be farther while other candidates are closer to a test center. We also know, we've heard from some candidates of my closest test center only delivers the exam on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or they only deliver Wednesday through Saturday. And that is true, is that some of those test centers might have more limited hours based on the volume of candidates in that area. So PSI has created those sessions for NCARB candidates based on historical volumes, based on our candidate population. And as I mentioned before, Nick and Cassandra and I meet with PSI on a regular basis, and we are constantly reviewing that sort of data. And so again, here's another opportunity for you as candidates to reach out to NCARB to say, hey, I'm trying to schedule at my test center and they have limited hours and the soonest appointment I see is still 2 months away. Let us know about it, because then that's something that we can talk to PSI and say, hey, we keep hearing from candidates in this location that they can't find appointments. And then we'll work with PSI to make sure that we open up that scheduler more to provide more opportunities for candidates to test. So some of this is just, you know, as we're continuing to ramp up operations with PSI, let us know what you're seeing. If you're having difficulty scheduling, please reach out and we will continue to work with PSI to ensure, you know, that access to testing for everyone. So Cassandra, I don't know if that's a takeaway so much of, just wanted to squeeze that one into this webinar before we wrap up today.
That was really great, Michelle. Thank you. We did have one last question here that popped up. Can you clarify a question from earlier? If you become licensed in the state of Virginia using the ESL accommodation and want to become licensed in New York 3 years later, New York not accepting reciprocity means they have to take New York's exam again?
Yes, that would be, now you're going 3 years down the road. We're assuming, so for the sake of this question, let's assume that New York still has the same policy that they have today, June 30th, 2022, where they do not accept non-standard, non-ADA accommodations. If you are in Virginia and you have the NCARB certificate, what's going to happen is you are going to try to get a license in New York, and New York will not accept any exams. Now, it's important to recognize any exam. So if you have, let's say, you know, you have 3 divisions passed without the ESL accommodation and 3 divisions passed with it, they will not accept those divisions passed with that ESL accommodation, and therefore will not provide you with reciprocal licensure. So yes, as that was described, Cassandra, New York would not issue that individual license in that case.
Thank you, Nick. Nick, do you have any takeaways that you'd like to share with our attendees?
Yeah, and it's really along the lines of what Michelle just mentioned about NCARB. We have an excellent customer relations team that can help with a lot of these questions. I'm sitting here, I'm scrolling through all the Q&A, and there are a lot of questions about how this ESL accommodation impacts me, if I can apply for it or not. What if I'm in this state? Feel free, give us a call, give our customer relations team a call. We can help you sort of understand your situation, how it applies to you. If you don't want to call us and you're like, you know, I'd rather email, feel free to email us. We also have an ARE online community. Go over there and you can post your questions as well. I know we have limited time today to get into all the different scenarios, but we're happy to help, take advantage of our resources. And we would be happy to help you out. This is a new accommodation. Like I said, we rolled it out on Tuesday. So we're only a couple days into this, and we'll be happy to support you with any questions you have about navigating the ESL accommodations process, and then also how that connects with any ADA accommodation maybe you already have or are looking to apply for. So that's my key takeaway, Cassandra.
Thank you, Nick. Well, I want to thank all of the attendees for taking the time to spend it with us today. If you have any questions in the meantime, as Nick said, please reach out to our customer relations team, and you can reach us at www.ncarb.org/contact, or you can reach us at 202-879-0520. We're open 8:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday, and we'll be happy to help you. So we're so glad you were able to join us. Please have a great rest of your afternoon.